right, welcome to the Global Professor. I am your professor, Professor Irina, Professor M, whatever's easier for you. Today I want to talk to you about conducting temperature checks of your team, right? Don't let your head go somewhere weird. It is just checking the energy in the room and checking up on your team. So I'll explain a little bit more of that in the video. All right, what is a temperature check? Temperature check is when you actually walk into a meeting or walk into a room with your team and you gauge the energy of each individual in that room. And you gauge the energy of each individual team. Temperature checks are basically you taking in the energy in that room to see if there's something that needs to be addressed, right? Now, with this idea comes every aspect of things that could possibly need to be addressed, whether it's a teammate's mental health or anything personal that may be going on with them. Why is this important? Well, because when we have personal issues, sometimes it interrupts the way that we work. So it's important to be able to have those conversations with your team to find out if there's something personal happening that could be hindering the progress that they need to have at work. Now, it also means sitting back, engaging the energy within a team. If there are problems within a team, if there's a lack of communication, if their work isn't being done on time, if they're having conflict within the team, right? So doing temperature checks is critical to leadership because you have to constantly be aware of the situations happening with each individual team member and each team, each group, right, of teams. Try to think of the role of a thermometer. The thermometer actually helps to find some kind of infection or lets you know that there's a possibility of an infection, right, in your body. That's why your temperatures rise. There's an infection, right? You're playing that role of the thermometer so that you can see if there's some kind of infection, if there's some kind of dis-ease, right, a disease, but a dis-ease in your team, in your family, with your friends. If something is going on, right, that's changing the energy, you can figure that out. Make sense? Okay. Here's another example. Think about your car. Your car has different gauges, right? One for the tire to let you know if your tire pressure is off, one for your windshield wiper fluid, one for your oil. It has different ways of letting you know if there's something going on that you need to pay attention to, right? Your car is basically taking its own temperature. Now, the reason why I learned to do this, well, here's one fact. If your team in some way is suffering, they're not going to produce, right? So if there is something happening within your team that is taking over their mind, in a sense, the work that they need to actually focus on will not be focused on. And so it's important for the leader to figure out where these little problems are so that they can come in and find a solution or help find a solution so that the team can actually focus on what they need to focus on. Now, every single meeting that I have, every single team that I go into, every single class that I have, I do temperature checks at the very, very beginning, right? So the very 15 minutes of class, very 15 minutes of a meeting, I do an icebreaker. Ask everybody, how was your weekend? What did you guys do? Tell them a little story. Tell them about a book that I was reading, something that I learned, whatever. And then what I do while I'm talking or while they're talking to me is I gauge the energy of every single individual in that room. My students can tell you I pay attention to the nonverbal, right? We say a lot more in our nonverbal communication than we actually say in our verbal communication. So I start paying attention to the body languages in the room. I start paying attention to the tones in people's voices. I start paying attention to whether people are paying attention or not, if they're distracted, if they don't look happy in that moment, what kind of energy they're bringing in when they walk into the room. I pay attention to all of that, right? So I'm doing those temperature checks, right? Certain people are great. They're at the perfect temperature, right? They're at 98.6. They are golden. And then there are people that have a fever, which means something is wrong, right? They are burning up. There's an issue, something wrong, right? So you got to kind of think like a doctor. Process of elimination. What's happening? Is it work related? Is it personal? Is it And that's when you can start going in and figuring out what the possible sickness is in order for you to be able to prescribe the right medication. But with leadership, this is critical. Why? Because as a leader, your team is your responsibility. And so whether they are in the right state of mind or not in that moment, that's your responsibility, right? You need to make sure that your team can produce. You need to make sure that your team can work at the level that they need to work in order to get results, the results that you're looking for. But the reality is that we're all human beings and we go through certain situations that sometimes we don't have control over, but tend to get control over us in a little way, in some way. And so it's important to be able to do these temperature checks so that you can gauge what is going on within your team, and then that way you can rectify any situation that you may need to rectify. Icebreakers are always good because it gives you time, right? It gives you a little bit of time to pay attention to what's going on around in the room, to the nonverbal, without people actually realizing that that's what you're doing, right? And icebreakers, when you actually just come in and you try to break the tension in the room, you try to break the nervous energy in the room. So you come in and you have a conversation about anything. It could be about, how was your St. Patrick's Day, right? It could be about the fact that you went for a great run on the beach and you saw turtles hatching. It could be about anything. It could be about a book that you read. It could be about a place that you went to dinner. It can be about anything. You initially walk into the meeting and you have an icebreaker. You have a conversation with your team that has nothing to do with the topic that you're actually going to talk about, right? That way it eases people's minds a little bit. It makes them a little bit more comfortable in the environment before you actually start getting to work. So an icebreaker is always good. If you don't know about thumb balls are great. So these are thumb balls, right? And if you look, they have questions all over the ball itself. These are great for icebreakers. These are great. Why? Because, well, toss it to somebody wherever their thumb lands. That question, a sound that you love. Laughter. I love laughter. I love my mom and my dad's laugh, especially when they laugh, their stomachs hurt. I love that sound. These are great icebreakers. Why? Well, takes the focus off whatever's about to come for a minute, lets people calm down, but it's also really good because the team starts getting to know each other differently, right? And it's not always about work. You can ask random little questions that your team has to answer, and it becomes a fun game, and the team starts getting to know each other. Now, while you're leading, while you're at the front paying attention to all of this, you can do your temperature checks. You can sit back and start watching and looking at Richie, right? Looking at DeAndre. And looking at Carolina and looking at Jennifer, right? And you can sit back and start watching everybody and seeing how all of these people are engaging in the conversation, and you can start looking at body posture, right? You can start listening to the tone of voice. When somebody's answering, you can instantly tell if something's wrong just by somebody's tone of voice. Lack of eye contact, right? All of these things help you to see if there's something wrong in your team. And so you can gauge the energy in the room. So temperature checks are, right? Now, the important thing about temperature checks, as a leader, you have to be able to recognize the signs of a problem. That can be complicated. Why? Because that takes active listening. It also takes being emotionally intelligent and being socially aware. Emotional intelligence is when you are clear in the understanding of what certain emotions are, right? You understand what anger is, you understand what joy is, you understand all of these things. Now, being socially aware is when you can recognize these emotions in other people, and you can sit back and go, something's wrong with DeAndre today. His posture's off. His body language doesn't look like, what he would always say. He's not sitting up straight. He's not making eye contact. Shoulders are slouched. He's looking down. Something's up, right? And that's how you're gauging that something's wrong with your teammate DeAndre. That allows you to go to him and sit back and go, hey man, what's going on with you today? You all right? You seem off. What's up? Is there anything I can help you with? You need to talk about something, right? Sometimes that alone, believe it or not, I can't even tell you how many times in some of my teams, that alone, there's a fly. You can't see it. It's driving me crazy. Sometimes that alone helps them feel valued enough to, sometimes that's all we need is just to feel valued. But sometimes that alone lets them know that, somebody's seeing them, that their leader is paying attention to their well-being, which is critical, right? With these temperature checks, it's important for you to teach your team how to do their own temperature check, right? Every single team member should learn to pay attention to the energy of each other, of the other teammate, just to make sure that people are working correctly, that people are okay, that they're functioning well. And one of the reasons why this is so important is because, well, it affects your mental health. Your mental health, we need to talk about that more. That subject needs to be a topic of conversation in more meetings, in more classrooms. It just needs to be a topic of conversation everywhere. As a leader, you've got to be able to figure out all of this stuff. Now, active listening plays a major role in this temperature check. Why? Because you have to physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that, be there in the conversation with your team or your teammate to find out what is happening, right? Now, active listening, that's an art. It's a very lost art, but that's an art. And when you actively listen to somebody's conversation, you're actively listening to what they're saying, you are engaged 100% in that conversation. That means there is no distraction, right? No cell phone, no nothing. You need to put your phone away. Because when you put your phone on the counter, that communicates that there's a possibility that something else could distract you from the importance of that conversation. You don't want to make anybody feel like they're second when they need to be first, right? Put the phone away. Believe it or not, that communicates something. Now, actively listening is sitting back and listening to what the person has to say and then returning with questions. So what I think you're trying to tell me is this. So am I wrong about this? It seems that you're feeling this, right? I had a student that told me once, seems like a therapy session. And it's like, well, yeah, if you think about it, actively listening is being present in the moment, being present in the conversation, fully 100% engaged in the conversation, $100 bill, showing up 100% to that conversation. With that comes asking the right questions, right? Because when you're having a conversation with somebody else and you're trying to get information from them, you don't want to create the information yourself. You want them to give you the information that you need in order to find out what is actually happening. But you don't want to have it be from your perspective. You want it to be from their perspective, right? That's why asking questions like, so what I think you're saying is, right? Because it gives them a chance to correct it. No, that's not what I meant. I meant this. Okay, so what I think that you're feeling about this is, right? Using social awareness to express whatever emotion you think that they are feeling, right? No, that's not what I'm feeling. Or yeah, that's exactly what I'm feeling about this. Okay, so what I think is making you uncomfortable about this situation is, right? And asking questions. In order for those people on your team to provide you with the information that you need in order to help them find a solution to the problem, right? I'll give you an example. I had a student who was about to do a presentation for class, right? I have my students do a ton of presentations in class, mainly because I want them to work on their presentation skills. And so I was walking over to the room and I saw her standing outside, dressed, professional, ready to go, but something was wrong. Something was really wrong. And I could tell instantly in her energy that something was off. And so I walked over to her, I'm not gonna say her name, but I walked over to her and I was like, hey, you look like something's up. What's going on? You all right? And she just started crying. And I was like, whoa, this is just a presentation, right? Don't stress it too much. Is that what you're worried about? And with that question, is that what you're worried about? Instantly, she was like, no, professor. I just got a phone call that my mom went to the hospital. What? And I was like, okay, how are you feeling right now? And obviously it was, I don't know, I can't concentrate. I'm worried about her. I really want to do this presentation well, but my head is where she's at right now. Totally understandable, right? Totally understandable. And so instantly I looked at her and I had to think in that moment. And I looked at her and I said, what do you think would help you get through this right now? What can I do? What do you think would help you get through this? And she looked at me and she said, I don't know, maybe getting this presentation done as fast as I can so that I can go be with my mom and leaving early. My response to that was, why don't we set this presentation for another day? And why don't you go be with your mom right now? You're not going to give me 100% tonight. Your head isn't here, right? And I'm not about to do that to you. Why? Because your success is my success, right? And if I know that you're about to go into a situation where there's a grenade, I'm not about to sit there and tell you, hey, go walk on in. I know this is going to blow up in your face. Let's see that happen. No, it's not about that, right? Your success is my success. And I knew that she wasn't going to give me 100% of what she could give me in a better mental state. So told her, I think it's a lot better for you to go be with your mom tonight. Don't worry about the presentation. We'll do it another day when your mom is better, when you're in a better state of mind. Okay? And she went home. She went and spent the day with her mom. I checked in with her every single day to make sure her mom was doing all right. Why? Because my team matters, right? Temperature checks every single day. Now, the next week when we went back to class, she came in ready to go, right? First thing I asked, how are you doing? How's your mom? She's better? She's home? Great. How are you feeling? You're good? You ready for this? All right, let's do this, right? She came in ready to go. And she gave me a phenomenal presentation. Not only that, she was super grateful. Can't be about my ego, because it would have been a lot easier for me to have her present that night and just do whatever she did, great or be done with it, right? But that wasn't the point. She was part of my team. And so her success has to be my success. Wasn't do or die that night. She literally could have gone, and she did, and I'm glad she did, because she came back a stronger team member, right? And there needed to be a different kind of solution to this problem in order for her to be successful at what she needed to be successful at. Temperature checks. This is why it's so important to understand what's happening with your team so that you can help them succeed. And sometimes it may mean go home, go be with your family. Sometimes it may mean let's go in my office, let's talk about this for a minute. I want to know what's going on with you. You matter, right? So if something matters to you, it matters to me. Sometimes it can just be that. Sometimes it can be, let's bring in your team so that we can have a conversation, because there's obviously something happening with you guys and it's not working, right? And we need to produce an outcome, and this conflict is not going to allow that to happen. So let me be the mediator and let's sit down and have a conversation. And then you become kind of like the group therapist and go in, okay, wait. What I think they're trying to say is this. Am I correct? Okay, what I think you're trying to say is this, right? Am I correct? And getting points across in a way that's healthy. Sometimes you have to do that. Temperature checks are critical to the success of a team, and it starts with the leader. But this takes being emotionally intelligent. It takes being socially aware. It takes active listening, intense active listening, right? And it takes being aware of the energy in the room and understanding nonverbal communication. What are people saying when they're not saying anything at all? That is how you really gauge a room, and then asking the right questions. Temperature checks can change the outcome of a project immensely. Temperature checks can change the strength of a team immensely. But temperature checks as a leader are critical to the success of your team. Sitting back and taking a couple of minutes before every single meeting, use dumbbells. These things are fun. Seriously, they're fun. But taking these and tossing them around the room and having people answer questions, right? Getting your team to get to know each other better, great. But sitting back and watching. Something's wrong with Tiffany today. What's up with that? Yeah, I need to talk to her. That team is not making any eye contact with each other. Something's up. Something happened since the last meeting. I need to find out what's going on. Right? Your success is my success. That mindset, that mentality, temperature checks comes with that. I want to touch on this for a second because I think it's really important too. These cell phones are meant to connect us, right? There's a reason why I said, like, put it away. They're meant to connect us, but they are also so detrimental to connections that we're making with people or trying to make with people in the moment at times, right? This is why I said put the phone away. Whenever you're trying to connect with somebody and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with them, the first thing you need to do before you even start asking questions is put the phone somewhere in a drawer, in a purse, in your back pocket, just away, so that they know that you are really serious about being there for them, that you are really serious about being there in that moment, and that you really care, because that cell phone communicates something to the person that you're about to have a serious conversation with, right? Putting it out on the desk right in front of you, that's communicating that, look, there's a possibility that something may be a little more important than this conversation. So I'm just going to leave that there just in case. No, in that moment, nothing needs to be more important than you figuring out what's going on with your team or your team member or your family member or your friend. Put the phone away. I'm going to tell you the truth, and this really sucks to say it, but it's the truth. I have people in my life that I love with my whole heart, but I don't go to them very much anymore about personal problems, about really intense things that are happening to me. Why? Because I got sick and tired of saying, hey, are you listening to me? And I am not competing with Facebook or Instagram or a text message that can wait. I'm not. Why? Because I value my time and I value myself. And if I'm about to sit there and bare my soul to somebody, I want to know that that person cares about it, because it's not easy to do. And so if the phone is going to become a distraction, I'm not going to tell you about it. If my journal is going to listen better than you, I'm going to go to my journal. Right? There's no worse feeling than to have somebody come to you about something that's going on and you make them feel lonely. There's no worse feeling. You don't want to be that person where people sit back and go, no, don't go talk to them. They're not going to listen. They're not going to listen anyway. So save yourself. Save yourself from that conversation. That sucks. Remember that you want your team to trust you and feel they can come to you with problems. So you want to actively show up. Okay, I hope that you learned something about temperature checks, about the importance of actually paying attention to your team at every single meeting before the meeting even starts, right? Now, one thing that I have learned, especially in this virtual world, because it's a little difficult, I thought it was going to be, to do these temperature checks during these virtual times. It's really not. It's really not. Because if you can have a full screen with everybody on your team, right? And you do the same thing. You can even be the one holding the thumb ball if you want to use the thumb ball. Call somebody out. Boom. Chris, a major decision. Tell me about one. And as he's talking, you go around and you watch your team. Right? One thing I used to do, or one thing I do, is I set up dates and I call each team on specific dates. And I do a temperature check just on that team. Hey, how are you guys doing? How's the project going? You guys need anything? You having any issues you want to talk to me about that maybe I can help you with? Right? It's not about micromanaging. It's about letting your team know that you are there to lead them if they ever need you to, right? And doing constant temperature checks. So I hope that you learned something about this whole temperature check thing, why it's important, how it can really elevate the success of your team. If you as a leader can learn how to do this, learn how to take in the energy of your team, it can be a little exhausting. I'm gonna let you know that right now. It can be a little exhausting. But that's why you as a leader have to take care of yourself too, right? After a meeting, go have some ice cream or go outside and get some fresh air so you can get that energy back into your system. Go have a good cup of water. Water's good for you, right? Go do anything that makes you happy after you do this for at least 5 minutes as a leader, because you matter. Your cup has to be full also. But I hope you learned something. I want you to tell me if you have any ideas or if you implement temperature checks in your team. What do you do? Give me some ideas. Tell me something new that maybe I haven't implemented that I would love to learn about. Tell me about your temperature checks, what it is that you do in your team. How do you break the ice in the beginning, and then how do you gauge how your team is doing? Let me know. Love to hear from you. All right, you already know. Subscribe, hit the bell, share this video with people that you may think may need it, or leave your comments. I want to get to know you guys. It matters to me. Remember, your success is always going to be my success. I am here for you. You know that. All right. Have a good day. Bye.